You are listening to WCBN 88.3 FM Ann Arbor. I'm here with Jennifer Babcock, author of C'est La Vie, a comic that's available at ucomics.com as well as on her website. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Pretty good.
That's good.
How did you get started doing comics?
Well, I started drawing comics when I was in high school. I used to do them in the margins of my notebook, and then one day I decided to draw full-page comics for myself and for my friends. I suppose the catalyst was this breakup I had with somebody, and it was really the best way for me to deal with it because the comic was about a breakup, and that was actually the beginning of C'est La Vie.
Why did you choose to specifically do comics? It seems like most girls who get into bad breakups write bad poetry instead of really good comics.
Well, I recognized that my poetry was really bad, so I wasn't going to go there. But I knew my comics were good, and I'm much better at writing humor than being authentically depressing, so I decided to go that route.
What other comic artists are you inspired or informed by, or do you think inform the work in some way?
Well, I'm inspired a lot by Edward Gorey, who wrote all those really depressing short stories like the Gastrogram Tinies, and I'm also influenced, I hope, by Tim Burton and mainly his art style. And I also like Yonan Vasquez's humor a bit. I don't usually use it, but I do appreciate it, and I think once in a while I do try to touch upon that. But my style is most influenced by Disney animated features from the early 90s, mid-90s. So,
what do you think, how do you think you came up with the idea to combine the sort of humor that you're interested in, which is slightly morbid, perhaps, with that sort of artwork, which is usually associated with, you know, very happy sort of
I think it was kind of an accident. I just really have trained myself to draw in that way because I had wanted to be a character animator for Disney so much when I was growing up. And that's really... I shouldn't say it's the only way I know how to draw, but it's the most comfortable style that I use. So I just kind of meshed that with my humor, and it ended up... it ends up working together. It's kind of an unusual blend, so I guess I got lucky there.
You were also doing this comic while you were in school for the newspaper at your university, and I noticed that the style of artistry is a little bit different. Your drawing style is different. Can you talk maybe a little bit about how that changed or why?
Well, when I was trying for UCLA for the Daily Bruin, I don't really know if it's because my style necessarily changed. I guess there are some differences in at least how I color, but that mainly has to do with me being kind of cheap and lazy and only wanting to use Sharpies and ballpoint pens. But the style itself hasn't really changed much. I think it's more that my artwork has gotten better after just drawing every day for years. Between me drawing the comic in high school and me starting to draw for the newspaper at UCLA, there was about a 1-year gap where I didn't really draw at all. And so, when you don't practice your artwork, it starts to become lacking. But once you start doing it every day, it starts to improve drastically. And I think that's the difference you're primarily seeing.
How do you see your work fitting into sort of comic book media in general?
Well, could you elaborate?
Do you see it as more of like a mainstream newspaper comic or something that might come out in sort of a book format someday? Or
I see it as something that could possibly go mainstream if people are open-minded enough to let it become mainstream. I think in general it is a very mainstream type feature, but for something like a newspaper where everything is much more conservative, you know, it is a little bit edgier. I just hope that newspaper editors can see a little bit beyond their scope and let comics like mine filter into the newspaper. But as for a graphic novel, I don't know if I could ever turn C'est La Vie into a novel format, but that might just be because I'm lazy and graphic novels require so much work. But I'll have to, I would consider doing that.
One of the things that really sets your work apart from a lot of the things that we might see in the daily newspaper, wherever we are, is the main character not only being female, but not really being particularly hapless. It's more the secondary characters, and the fact that she's foreign, also some of the humor. Can you talk a little bit about how you put these characters together, maybe what they're based on?
Okay, well, Mona, the main character, is this very, the bitter, morbid, sarcastic French girl. And I put her in as my main character because I find her, I don't know, she really, I feel, drives the comic. Originally she wasn't the main character, but I find it more interesting when we focus on her. Originally, Donna Fitzpatrick, her roommate, was the main character of the comic, who, as you know, is this really ditzy, kind of an airhead, but who's managed to find success somehow in the corporate world. But she's really there to kind of counterbalance Mona in a way, and to see how their personalities clash. I think it kind of it creates this unusual dynamic between the two. Some pretty funny situations come up because of it. And then we have Monsieur Smokey, who is Mona's stuffed bunny, who, I don't know, he has a very perverse sense of humor, which is akin to her brother Pierre. And but he is like Mona's guiding light in a way. I think Mona's bunny, Monsieur Smokey, and Pierre share a lot of qualities together with each other, but one is more tangible, obviously, to other people. I don't know how many people can relate to Stuffed Rabbit, but people seem to like him. But that's how the basic relationships work between the main characters. Then there's Lucas, who I think he himself isn't as funny as the situations I put him in. He's a more passive character, but I'm sure as the comic develops and he comes to the forefront of like all of the subjects, later he'll begin to develop his own sense of humor. But I like to put these different kinds of humor in to try to appeal to everybody as much as I can, but also because I just think it's interesting to see how these sense of humors clash with each other.
One of the fun things that I like a lot about reading C'est La Vie is that it sort of covers a whole range of different relationships. You have dating relationships of different kinds, friendships, sibling relationships. Maybe Monsieur Smokey kind of fits in with siblings. How do you get the inspiration for those sorts of interactions in your comic? Is it from real life, or is it just sort of what's funny or what seems right?
The relationships are definitely taken from a lot of what either my own experience or from what my friends tell me. For some reason, a lot of my friends come to me when they have their relationship problems, which I wouldn't do if I knew someone was writing a comic about it. As for the sibling relationship, that's completely fabricated. I'm sure I must take some inspiration from my friends who have siblings, but I'm an only child, so it's just me kind of guessing what it would be like to have a brother or a sister. But like I said, most of my friends, I've seen siblings battle it out in the living room before, so I have some idea what it's like.
With Mona and Donna, you have sort of an opposites attract
Mm-hmm.
friendship, and you also have the juxtaposition of Mona's sort of non-relationship with Lucas and Donna's sort of weird relationship / marriage.
Mm-hmm.
What are your views on marriage and dating? It seems kind of dismal from what you put in your comic.
Well,
I guess we're a little too young to really think about marriage.
Marriage, I mean, marriage is something that, surprisingly, this is going to shock some fans of mine, I'm sure, that I would want to do someday, but I really feel like a lot of women, especially our age, which would be like 24, kind of rush into it. And I'm really, right now, commenting on that. I really feel that people don't take it seriously enough, and they're just too concerned with the wedding rather than the marriage, which is what we're seeing with Donna right now. I mean, I really believe that marriages can work. My parents are a testament to that. So I don't necessarily have a dismal view on it, but I guess skeptical would be a better word. And dating is interesting. I've never really dated a lot, but I have been in a few, long-term relationships before.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of good times, lots of bad times, like anybody else's relationship. But I do think that a lot of the time it's really soured me a bit and made me kind of cynical. But of course, I'm not the type that would just stop dating people. So, yeah.
Yeah. And from this and other things as well, it seems that you may be influenced somewhat by feminism or post-feminism or whatever sort of woman-centered philosophy people are into. How might that inform your work, if at all? And are you kind of trying to just give a message or just tell a story?
Primarily I'm trying to tell a story, but I'm also trying to tell a story from a woman's viewpoint, obviously, and that has to do with mainly because you don't really see newspaper comics discussed from a woman's perspective other than Kathy maybe or a handful of others. And my readers know that I'm not too fond of Kathy and how she portrays women. I mean, granted, Kathy is in the workforce and everything, but she's way too obsessed with shoes or going shopping, and it kind of ignores this other type of woman that may not be obsessed with shopping or shoes or finding a husband or even necessarily finding a career, but who's just being herself, trying to survive in the big city. I don't know.
That brings up another thing that we actually talked about last time we spoke a little bit, which was what it's like to be a woman in the world of comics. Because you said before that you were trying to maybe sell your comic to newspapers or other sort of media outlets, but maybe there's not so much of a place for a female voice there. Do you feel that way?
I feel like there's definitely a place. I feel like a lot of the time we're not given the opportunity to showcase our work. And I don't know if I don't believe that's conscious, but I think at least in newspapers they feel that comics about single women would not be marketable because the newspaper editors believe that it's geared towards families or men, and that I have no idea if that's true. I'm just going by their statistics. But even still, if they want to claim a new audience, like they say they do, then I believe they should appeal to these single women in their early to mid-20s or whatever. I mean, it's just kind of sad how every female in the comics pages is pregnant or married, which obviously isn't very representative.
Except for Sylvia the cat lady. Let's not forget the cat lady.
Let's not forget the cat lady. Well, that's like a completely different issue.
They're just, you should try to sell it as Mona, the pre-cat lady.
Yeah, exactly.
For Sylvia to remember what she used to be like.
Yeah.
Just obviously joking. How do you view comics in relation to other storytelling media? It's something you've chosen to do, but it doesn't necessarily get a lot of respect.
Well, I feel like comics are kind of put in a funny place. As a friend once told me, I had an argument with him about comics and how valuable they are. And he was saying to me that he thought that comics were kind of like a poor attempt at, or someone who could not quite write a novel and someone who could not make a movie or animate something completely. And I don't know, there's something about a graphic novel or a comic that I feel is unique to them that you can't capture in either media, which I appreciate. There's something very poetic about this interplay between text and image that I like. So I think that's why I chose it. I mean, obviously, it's also because I don't think I have the patience to write a novel. I feel that a lot of the times images are just speak to me more clearly, but also I just don't have the means to do an animated show or movie or whatever. But even still, like I said, I really love the way that the text and the image kind of relate to each other on the page.
You're listening to WCBN FM Ann Arbor. I'm here with Jennifer Babcock, author of C'est La Vie. You can see it at ucomics.com in the Comic Sherpa.
Oh, not Comic Sherpa, by the way. No.
I'll have to take that out.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
I don't have the website up on my computer. Oh, man, now I don't know what I was going to say.
Sorry.
Man, last time I feel like it went so well, and then I just had to ruin it. I know what I was going to say. Okay. We're starting over.
Okay.
You are studying art history in graduate school. How do you feel your studies, either as an undergraduate or graduate, have influenced your storyline or characters or your outlook on the medium itself of comics?
On the media itself?
Well, just not the media, but the comics
in
general.
Okay. Comics.
The medium of comics is what I meant.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat your question now? I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I probably am not making sense. Okay. I don't know why this is so hard. You are studying art history right now in graduate school, and I was wondering how your studies or the outlooks of the people that you work with have influenced the storyline or characters, as Mona is an art critic. And also maybe if it's made you think about comics in a different way.
Okay. Well, in terms of my actual comic, we see references to art history kind of peppered throughout the storyline. There's one comic where you see Lucas, and he has subscriptions to art journals like Art News and Art Forum and things like that. And we have Mona talking about what it's like to be an art critic and how she feels kind of like a fake, because she has to make up all this BS about how she feels about these paintings. And we also see her daydreaming about what it'd be like to be an art historian, yet also respected for being someone who's important. As to the medium in general, people at my grad school typically are a bit old-fashioned and would not consider comic art to be something worth studying, at least as a high art. I think they feel that it's kind of like a half art. That's just the impression I get. I'm sure not everyone at my school feels that way, but I don't know. There's been a lot of attention given to comics lately by art historians, and I think in Art News they had an article called Why has there never been any great female comic artists, which is in reference to Linda Naucklin's article, Why have there not been any great female artists? So I think that comics are are getting much more attention, which of course has interested me and made me reconsider my field, because I'm an Egyptologist right now, and I'm thinking, well, if people are being so serious about comic art, maybe I should try to write some scholarly work on it. And they also had a couple of exhibits in Los Angeles on comic art. But I don't know, it's made me really reconsider how important comics are to our society and to society in general. I mean, people in Japan have already recognized this importance, but I lost my train of thought.
Comic art is important.
Yeah.
You study it.
Yeah, and it's a valuable subject worth studying, I think.
Do you think that, you mentioned that the article about no great female artists, no great female comic artists, do you think that is actually because there maybe hasn't been one, that women haven't been doing it because they haven't been interested, or really there hasn't been enough time to sort of cultivate the viewpoint, or because maybe critics and people in general aren't as receptive to it, and so maybe there's women out there doing fantastic comics or have been doing fantastic art, but people aren't going to give it the credit it deserves?
I'm sure there's been plenty of female comic artists that would even be considered great, that critics just don't pay attention to for whatever reason. I understand that female comic artists are quite rare. It's a very male-dominated field. I feel that way all the time whenever I sit down at a dinner or barbecue or whatever with other cartoonists. I'm usually the only female. But I know there's been some really wonderful stuff by women. And I believe in that article, Why Have There Not Been Any Great Female Comic Artists, the author does list quite a few female artists. And in fact, the article was kind of an attack on the two exhibitions that were in Los Angeles, or it was actually one, but it was held in two museums called Masters of American Comics, held at the UCLA Hammer Museum in LA MoCA, because in both museums there was not a single female comic artist represented, and which is a little bit problematic if you're going to be calling the show Masters of American Comics and there's no females shown up there. So, but I'm sure they exist, but they just haven't been recognized, and I'm not sure why.
It's always an interesting question of whenever I see an exhibit that's Masters of X, and there's like the one woman that maybe wasn't as famous, I always wonder, did they put her in because I thought she was just as good and didn't get credit, or because she's the token female? It always brings up a lot of issues, but hopefully you can maybe change some of that.
Yeah.
Have you gotten any support or advice from other comic artists that you met, or do you even have any maybe mentors, so to speak?
Well, I don't have any like a staple of, or no, I shouldn't say that. I do have a circle of comic artists who are either well known or not as well known, who do support me, and they're almost always male. In fact, I think they all are male. But they appreciate what I'm doing, and they range from other webcomic artists to people who are syndicated. Probably one of the things I remember, what touched me the most, I think, was when I was talking to Aaron McGruder, who writes the Boondocks, and he told me not to ever give up. And he said he really attributed to the lack of attention I was getting at the time because of my age. And he said, there really needs to be a comic by a young woman like you. And he's like, just don't give up and keep doing it. And we reminisced about how hard it is to draw comics in general, basically trade talk, I guess. But yeah, I have been getting a lot of support from people and my family too, of course. So
that's good to hear. It seems like you two might have been, he might have been in a somewhat similar position where maybe it was not thought that maybe the audience that he would appeal to would be one that would be reached by comics or would get a newspaper.
Yeah, I'm sure.
More circulation, and it's turned out quite the opposite. How do you sort of, I guess this is sort of a switch in focus, but how do you plan the sense of humor in your work? Does it relate to your personal sense of humor, or is it something that the specific characters have maybe specific situations?
Well, it's a little of both, I suppose. Let me try to interpret this question as best as I can. Each character has their own sense of humor, and they represent different parts of my own sense of humor. And I'm very careful not to mix the senses of humor up with the characters, so you would rarely see Donna having a morbid sense of humor. And if she does, that's part of the joke, because she's normally so silly and upbeat. And I suppose that's how I do it.
Who do you think your audience is at the moment? You've said that you really want your comic to reach as many people as possible and try to appeal to as many people as possible. But right now you're just on the internet. So people kind of have to go find you or be led to you. So do you have any idea who exactly, what sort of person? Or?
Well, according to you comics, my comic appeals to a general audience between the ages of 18 and 35.
Ooh, that's like the number one audience to have, right? No?
I'm not really sure. I mean, I know ideally it's just you're supposed to be under the category of mass appeal, and mine is pretty narrow compared to everybody else's. But it's supposedly the what's the word for it? Yeah, thank you. It's supposedly
such a wild guess.
It's supposedly the demographic that they're shooting for right now, which is good for me. That sounds about right. I believe that most of my readers are between the ages of 18 to 35, though I know I do have readers that are older and sometimes younger. And I get the feeling, I'm not sure who reads my comic more, men or women. Yeah, I get a lot more mail from males. And but I know that there's a huge female appeal to this. I mean, since the comic really is about relationships. So it's really hard to say, but age-wise, 18 to 35, I guess.
What sort of responses do you get, if you don't mind sort of sharing?
Oh, the male?
How people respond. Well, male or female, how people, if there's any, specific responses you've gotten that you found interesting or important.
Well, it's all been positive and it's touching. I don't get hate mail anymore. Anymore. I used to get hate mail once in a while when I first started out, because this is when I was on this other site that's part of UComics called Comic Sherpa, where they test everybody's comic out and make sure that it's good, and if they feel like it's good enough and strong enough, they move you on to UComics. I think at first I was really shocking to people, and they were offended, and that's when I got some of my hate mail. And then when I was at UCLA, I would purposely go out and offend people. I get hate mail then.
That's what you're supposed to do when you write for a university newspaper.
Yeah, but I feel now that because I have my own website, I mean, people aren't going to visit my website or visit the UComics site unless they really like it, so I don't really get hate mail anymore. I get sometimes I get very inspiring email. I got one from a teacher saying that he used my comic to teach his students English and teach his students American humor, to show that we are very sarcastic and that we don't mean to offend. And sometimes, somebody will tell me, oh, I'm going through this really rough time right now for whatever reason, and they say, your comic just brightens up my day. It's like what I wake up for, and that's always really inspiring to me, because no matter how frustrating it will get, I know that as long as it's touching somebody, that I should keep doing it.
I had a wonderful moment, actually, 3 or 4 days ago, when there was that comic where Mona came home upset, and she had gin and tonic. She would have gin and tonic where I was visiting friends, and she came home upset, and I got her gin and tonic, and then I, looked up the comic and was like, oh, that's my day.
Yep.
It's pretty realistic. They're pretty good drinks, though.
It is a good drink. My roommate gives it to me whenever I'm stressed out, actually.
You shouldn't drink until you're 21 if you're listening.
Yes.
So you've talked a little bit about, alienating people intentionally or unintentionally with your work. So there's a bunch of actually jokes in there that could be a little bit offensive, especially about goths, art historians. And those seem like also people that might really like your comic. Do you worry about, offending anyone, or is it just,
I don't, because I figure anyone that I'm interested in having as a reader should not be easily offended and should be able to take a joke.
They don't like you, you don't like them.
Well, I mean, I respect people who may find something offensive, but I can't bend backwards and not offend anybody, because I think part of what makes something interesting is that it's like slightly offensive to somebody. Non-offensive humor for me isn't nearly as entertaining as offending someone, I guess. But I do a very good job to try to show that I'm not, overly mean about it, and that I'm obviously joking. I know quite a few goths who I talk to sometimes, like not. We don't have a deep relationship, but it's very casual.
And a deep, meaningful, dark, and horribly beautiful relationship. I'm making fun of goths.
No, it's just very casual, but nothing like I used to write. Like when I used to make fun of the Greek system at UCLA, it's nothing like that. So I think most people are probably okay with it.
The main character of your comic, Mona, is French. I guess she's lived here for a while, but is a foreigner. Do you think that that's maybe an issue in your comic, or why did you even decide to make her foreign? Do you think that gives her sort of a different view as a character and a different range of things she can say that maybe wouldn't be acceptable from, say, Donna? Not that she would have that humor at all.
Well, we talked about this before a little, and I had said that it was kind of an accident that she ended up French, and that's completely true. For some reason, when I was naming her, I came up with a French name, and it just kind of stuck, and I thought it would be funny at the time if I gave her a French accent, and because I really love the way Parisians kind of stereotypically are like these really bitter people. I thought it fit with her character quite well. And before her foreignness wasn't really an issue, and it still doesn't play too major of a role in the comic, but once in a while it does come up. She talks about how people treat her differently, and there was one comic where in context of how the French were treated or talked about or thought of after 9/11, where she thinks it's unfair because she does everything that an American citizen does, so why should she be attacked just for her accent or where she's from when she's acting like an American now? But yeah, I definitely touch upon like the kind of prejudices that exist for the French in America.
I guess something of what I was getting at that I thought of while you were speaking, maybe I can put it a little bit better, is do you think it sort of gives her an authenticity as an outsider to be a foreigner, even if you didn't plan it in the beginning, or is it just for fun still?
No, it does. I mean, I think really isolates her from her, this LA context, especially since there aren't too many French people in Los Angeles. It would be maybe different if the comic was set in New York, where there actually is a pretty large French population. But no, I unintentionally it's become that way.
And how do you plan your storylines out? Is it way ahead of time? Do you sort of have a Bible, like a soap opera, or
well,
day?
There are some goals that I have, or milestones in the comic that I have kind of vaguely sketched out in my head. Like I know exactly how the very last comic I do is going to be set up, but the events between now and then are very loosely organized and thought of, and sometimes it completely changes depending on how the characters have developed and depending on how the situations have come about. And a lot of the times the characters in the storyline just completely take hold of whatever I may have planned for them and write themselves.
You're listening to WCBN 88.3 FM Ann Arbor. I'm here with Jennifer Babcock, author of C'est la vie. You can check it out at www.clv-comic.com. Your comic is currently just published on the internet. Do you think that has affected the way you put it together or the way you plan storylines at all?
A little bit, because I think if I was doing it for print, as in if it was published in newspapers, I'd be more careful not to put any of the daily storylines into the Sundays. And I have been doing that, but once in a while something from the daily storyline will kind of creep into a Sunday comic, which I get the feeling you shouldn't really be doing in a print comic, because the Sunday comic is kind of seen as something separate from, the daily stuff. But when it's online and you have the archive in front of you, you don't have to pay attention to that so much. And I also feel that because my comic is online, I'm able to draw storylines out longer. I feel that when you do something in print and people aren't able to read back the archive, you're supposed to kind of cut storylines maybe only to a week or two. I can't think of an equivalent, but because sometimes my storylines can last for a month or longer. And print comics usually only last like a week.
So you're currently in grad school. Do you have the summer off, or do you have work to do right now?
I have the summer off. I'm back in Los Angeles. I will probably be working retail. No, but I applied for some museum jobs, and I'm going to be traveling sometime in July or August, so I'll be pretty busy.
How do you balance your schoolwork and working on the comic? Because you have to have one every day. It seems like a lot of work to me, and then I know that grad school can be completely overwhelming. Do you get a lot of the work done during the summer, or just take a break every once in a while?
Well, I try to build up my archive during the summer. My goal is to be a couple of months ahead instead of like a few weeks ahead by the time the summer ends, because next year is going to be a lot harder than this year has been. But usually what I do during the school year is I'll go to class at the library or whatever at 10 a.m. and I stay till 7 p.m. And then when I get home, I'll eat dinner, and then I'll work on my comic, and then maybe do some more work. I mean, it's pretty hard. I usually stay up till 2 or 3, but that's basically how I've been doing it, and it's been working so far. If I have a free weekend, I'll try to draw more than one a day. So, because sometimes, obviously, you're bound to not be able to do one when finals week comes along.
Yeah. Do you have any other projects you're working on, if you even have time for those, or do you have any other projects you'd like to get started?
Yeah, I have several little books that I would like to see come to I would like to actually sit down and draw and write, and I have different concepts running through my brain, and I've been drawing concepts for those, but it's just been a matter of time, and I haven't really had time to develop them fully, but hopefully maybe this summer I can do that.
Okay, I've been here with Jennifer Babcock, author of C'est la vie. You can learn more at WCBN.org, our website, or you can go to www.clv-comic.com to check out her work. Thanks for talking to us today.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to save this while you're on the phone.
Okay.